The sky above was red and full of fire. Ash rained like snow, covering the broken ground. Wind howled through the empty cities like ghosts crying. And under that burning sky, an alien mother walked slowly, her arms wrapped tightly around her. Sick child, she was barefoot, her legs shaking with every step, but she did not stop. She couldn't not until she found help, or hope, or died trying. Her name was Selra, and she had once been a proud pilot in her people's fleet. Now she was nothing but a shadow moving through dust and pain. Her child, Lern, was small, barely able to breathe. His body burned with fever, his eyes too weak to stay open. He held on to her with tiny fingers, and sometimes whispered, "Mama." Light hurts, they had been left behind. The great ships had lifted from the surface days ago, the last evacuation. They told her, "There's no room. Your child is too weak. He will not survive the journey," and just like that, the ramp closed. And the sky cracked open now. The planet was falling apart. Volcanoes had awakened, storms turned wild, and the air became poison. Only those in suits could breathe. But Selra had ripped pieces of her own armor to wrap her child's mouth. And chest, he cried less now, but not because he was better. He cried less because he was tired. Every mile she walked, her hope got smaller, but she didn't let go. Not of the child, not of the dream, that someone, anyone, would help. She reached an old hill where once there was a comms tower. It was broken now, covered in vines and ash, but she climbed it anyway. Step by step, her knees bled from the rusted metal at the top. She found an old signal unit, cracked, burned and cold, but not dead. A single light blinked slowly. Selra used her last bit of energy to press the emergency beacon. Then again and again, "Please," she whispered in her broken voice. "This is Selra of the Carinth people. I have a child. He is dying. Please." There was no answer, only the sound of static and her son coughing. The sun set again. But on this dying world, there was no beauty in it. It was red and sharp. Cutting across the sky like a wound, Selra carried Lern back down and hid inside. A half-destroyed transport vehicle. She found a metal sheet and used it to block the door. Inside, it was dark, but warm enough. She held her child close and hummed a soft lullaby from her homeworld. One about the stars and safe places far away. Her voice cracked, but she kept singing, even as her eyes filled with tears. "Sleep now, my star," she whispered. "Maybe they'll hear us. Maybe someone will come." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, and high above, far beyond the clouds, something blinked. A human listening post. Caught a signal. But Selra didn't know. She just curled her body around her son like a shield and slept with her, face against his small, cold hand. In the silence of that night, death walked close, but so did something else. A whisper of hope carried on invisible waves across the stars. To a man who had also lost a child once, and who now sat straight in his chair, staring at the blinking screen. Back on the ground, the alien mother stirred in her sleep, her body shaking with weakness, but her arms never let go. The sky was burning, the world was ending, but her heart was still alive, far away from the dying alien world. In the cold silence of deep space, a human outpost floated near the edge of an old star system. The station was small, forgotten by many, but inside, a lone human man stayed awake. His name was Beck, and he wasn't supposed to be listening. The station was set to watch for pirate signals or lost trade ships. Not for dying alien mothers. The big governments didn't care anymore. That part of space was labeled burned. No aid, no response, no rescue. But Beck didn't follow rules like everyone else. He sat in his quiet chair, sipping cold coffee, when a strange alert blinked on his screen, faint and broken. Just noise, some would say. But he leaned closer and tapped a few buttons. The message was weak. mostly static. But in between the noise, a voice came through, soft, shaking. "My child. Dying. Please." Beck stopped breathing. He turned up the volume and played it again. The words were not in English, but the pain was clear. He stared at the screen for a long moment, then checked the signal path it came from. The burning planet Carinth. He frowned. That world was dead, wasn't it? The database confirmed it. Carinth evacuated. Total loss. No survivors expected. So why was someone still sending a call? Beck opened the emergency channel to his command center. Sir, I just got a signal from Carinth. It's weak, but it sounds like someone's still alive." The voice on the other end was cold and bored. "Carinth's a dead rock, Lieutenant. Shut down the ghost signals and get some rest." "But sir," "No but. We don't waste ships on lost causes. Clear?" The line went dead. Beck stared at the screen. He should turn it off. That's what the protocol said. That's what everyone expected. But then he looked at the small photo on his desk. A little girl, smiling, her face frozen in time. His daughter gone years ago in a colony sickness outbreak. He hadn't been there to save her. It had been too late. Beck stood up slowly. He walked to the supply room and opened the locker marked "Do Not Use Without Command." Inside was an old scout shuttle, fast, quiet, and made for single passengers. He didn't ask for permission. He just typed one word into the system. "Rescue." As the engines warmed up, he whispered, "Maybe I couldn't save mine, but maybe I can save hers." The shuttle cut through space like a silent arrow, its lights dimmed, its shields holding. Beck flew alone. Watching the dark stars pass him by, he had 9 hours before the planet's orbit would fall into collapse. If the signal was real, he had to land, find the mother and child, and escape before the crust split open. Every few minutes, he played the signal again. The words were soft, the voice weaker each time, but still alive. Back on the surface of Carinth, the mother, Selra, was coughing now. She hadn't eaten in days. Her lips were dry. Her skin pale, she cradled her child under her arms as they both lay inside the broken ship hull. Her voice was a whisper. Just a little longer. Learn. Just a little longer. The child barely moved. Then something strange happened. A wind changed direction. A sound filled the air, not thunder, not a storm. It was low, smooth. A ship. Selra opened her eyes weakly and crawled to the edge of the wreckage. Through the smoke and ash, she saw a light bright and blue. It was descending from the sky like a star. Her hands trembled. She could not believe it. Far above, Beck's shuttle broke through the planet's upper atmosphere. He pushed the engines to the limit, scanning for life. The system blinked red. One life sign. Weak, alien. Child close. Approximate location, Sector 12. His heart pounded. "There you are," he muttered. The shuttle landed roughly near the signal zone. Ash and dust flew in all directions. Beck stepped out wearing his sealed suit and breathing unit, radiation. Warnings buzzed in his ear, but he ignored them. He walked through the ruins, calling out in the translator. "Hello, this is a human rescue officer. I received your signal. I'm here to help." No answer. He kept walking until he heard it. A tiny sound like breathing. He turned and saw movement under a metal sheet. He rushed forward and pulled it open. Inside lay the alien mother eyes. Half closed, lips cracked, but she was still holding her child. She looked up at the strange human face behind the helmet and cried. The ground shook again. Dust fell from the roof of the wrecked ship as Selra tried to lift her head. Her body refused, her arms weak, but her mind screamed one word: protect. The human was here, real, standing in front of her with strange gear and kind eyes. He looked at her, then at the child in her arms. Beck knelt down slowly, careful not to frighten her. He reached forward, his gloved hand resting lightly on the child's forehead. Too hot, too weak, too quiet. I need to get him out of here, Beck said through his suit's translator. But Selra didn't understand his words, only his eyes. And they told her he meant no harm. She gave a faint nod, then tried to speak, but no voice came, just a dry breath. A tear slipped down her cheek instead. Beck pulled out a small injection, packed from his belt, and gently pressed it to the child's neck. The serum hissed, softly it would slow the fever and help him breathe for a little longer. Not a cure, but a chance. I've got you, little one, Beck whispered. Then he lifted the child carefully into his arms. He turned to help the mother to but the ground rumbled again. This time it wasn't just an earthquake. It was footsteps, heavy, slow. And wrong? Selra's eyes went wide. She grabbed Beck's arm with all her remaining strength and pointed to the back wall. A warning. Something was coming. Beck activated his helmet's scan mode and froze. Large life form, mutated, unknown. Origin, distance, 170 meters. Approaching fast. He looked around quickly. No exit, no weapon strong enough to hold it off. Not in here. He moved the child to his chest harness and tightened the straps, then leaned down and tried to lift Selrushi. Cried out in pain. No time, he muttered, panic rising in his voice. Outside, the sky turned darker. A shadow passed over the wreckage, the air filled with a low, rumbling growl, like metal grinding against bone. And then the creature appeared. Once it might have been a forest beast, peaceful and gentle, but now its skin was cracked and glowing. Its eyes white with blindness, its mouth too wide, filled with jagged teeth. It had 3 legs and dragged a tail that hissed with acid. Beck's heart raced. He'd seen nightmares during the war, but nothing like this. The creature sniffed the air, turned its head toward the broken ship, and growled. Beck pulled out his blaster, a small one. It's made for defense, not for monsters. The mother pushed herself up. Using the last of her strength, she grabbed a sharp piece of metal and faced the wall. Her body was shaking, her eyes steady. Beck looked at her, then nodded. They had seconds left. The creature charged. It crashed through the side of the wreckage like paper. Beck fired 1 shot. 2 shots, but it barely slowed down. Selra screamed and threw the metal shard at its face. It sliced across one eye and the beast roared in pain, turning toward her. Beck ran forward, slamming his shoulder into the creature's leg. It stumbled back, but swiped its tail. The acid grazed his suit, burning through the outer layer. He rolled, grabbed Selra and pulled her behind a thick engine plate. He handed her a breathing patch from his belt and activated a distress flare. The room lit up red dot. The creature paused, confused by the sudden light. That was their chance. Run. Beck yelled, knowing she wouldn't understand. But she knew what he meant. He lifted the child again. Selra followed. Crawling behind him, they reached a small tunnel leading to the outside, narrow and low. The creature roared and chased. But the tunnel was too small for its size. It screamed in anger, smashing the walls as they crawled through ash and metal. Outside, the air was worse, choking smoke, poison winds, but Beck's ship wasn't far. He tapped his wrist. Console his shuttle's AI blinked to life. Return signal received. Locking coordinates, engines active. Beck turned to the mother. She collapsed beside him, coughing hard. Her eyes met his, and she smiled. She wasn't afraid anymore. Behind them, the creature burst from the other side of the building. It spotted them again. Beck picked up Selra in one arm and the child still strapped to his chest. He ran. Every step burned his lungs. The ground cracked under his boots. The creature roared louder, closer. The shuttle opened its hatch. They were almost there. Beck reached the shuttle just as the metal beneath his boots cracked open slightly. Heat rose from below. Smoke curled up into the air like fingers trying to pull him back. He turned quickly, lifting Selra inside, and then climbing in with the child still strapped to his chest. The shuttle doors hissed and began to close. But Beck looked up and froze. The mutated creature was not alone. Two more stepped from the shadows. Both bigger, both slower, but with twisted arms and razor-sharp limbs. Their skin dripped with green liquid, their eyes glowing with white fire. Beck shouted, "Seal now." The AI voice replied, "Shields at 47%. Launch window closing in 90 seconds. The shuttle's hatch shut just as one beast slammed against the side with a sickening boom. The ship rocked hard. Sparks flew. Inside, Selra screamed, shielding her child with her own body again. Beck jumped into the pilot seat, ignoring pain. In his side, the acid from before had burned through his suit. He could feel it, but there was no time for pain. Only action. He slammed his hands on the controls. The engines roared to life. Outside, the monsters clawed and smashed against the shuttle's hull. One tried to bite into the wing, but the human machine held firm. Lift off. Now. Beck yelled. The shuttle's boosters fired, and the ground beneath them gave way, cracking open like an old wound. The ship rose fast, flames swirling all around it. One of the monsters leaped desperate, trying to grab onto the landing gear. But Beck tilted the shuttle midair. The creature fell back into the burning dirt. Screaming as they reached the upper atmosphere, the sky turned from fire to black. Beck leaned back in his seat, gasping. The ship beeped softly, stable now, safe. He turned to check the passengers. Selra was lying down in the back, her skin pale, her eyes shut, but her chest still moved barely. Her child lay beside her, his fever now calm. Breathing smoother thanks to the shot Beck had given him earlier. They had made it. For now, back in orbit. Beck set course for Outpost 17's original station. It was small, but had medical tools, clean air, and food. He could help them there as the stars blinked outside the window. Beck looked at the floor. Ash and alien soil covered the shuttle's surface. Some still stuck to his boots. That was the first time in human history a human had stood on that. World Carinth after the evacuation, his footprint was there now. But it wasn't just about steps and dirt. It was about what that step meant. He didn't save a soldier, not a rich diplomat, not a commander. He saved a mother. A mother who was left behind because someone decided her child wasn't worth saving. Beck clenched his jaw. Who gives the right to choose who gets to live and who doesn't? Not him. Not anymore. As they got closer to the station, he opened the emergency medical box and took out bandages. He patched his side quickly and gave the mother a hydration shot. She stirred, slowly opening her eyes. Beck knelt beside her and showed her the child still safe, still breathing. She burst into tears, her hands shaking as she touched the boy's hair. Beck didn't need to understand her words. He understood the look in her eyes. It was thanks. It was trust. It was something shared between parents no matter the species. The shuttle finally docked with Outpost 17. Airlocks hissed. Systems activated. Lights blinked to life. Beck helped Selra out first, then carried the child. The AI system scanned them and confirmed radiation levels moderate. No infection detected. Critical condition, child. Severe dehydration, adult female. Beck activated the emergency medical bay, laid the boy on the clean white bed, connected 4 lines and oxygen. Then he sat beside Selra, giving her water slowly. She drank with shaking hands. No words passed between them. But silence had its own language. Later that night, Beck walked back to the control room. He sat down, opened a secure channel, and sent a message to Central Command. Survivors rescued. From Carinth, requesting medical evac and refugee status for one adult alien female and one child. Both stable, but need care. He hesitated, then typed again. They were left to die. Not anymore. Humanity responded. He pressed send. Outside, the stars remained silent, but inside the station, a new story had begun. For the first time in many days, there was no fire, no thunder, no screaming sky. Only the quiet hum of machines and soft lights on the walls. Selra opened her eyes slowly, confused. The air smelled clean. Her body didn't ache as much. Her child wasn't in her arms anymore. She sat up fast, her heart racing with fear. She tried to stand, but her legs were still weak. She almost fell, but strong human hands caught her. It was him, the human with the kind eyes, the one who had come through the fire, the monsters, the storms, to save her and her son. He smiled gently and held her steady. Then he pointed toward the next room. Selra turned her head and froze through the glass wall. She saw her son Lern sleeping on a white bed, his tiny chest rising and falling slowly, peacefully. No fever, no coughing, just rest. Tears filled her eyes. The human helped her sit down again, then walked over to the console and brought her a warm cup of water. She drank, her hands shaking, but not from weakness this time, from relief. She looked at the human and placed her hand on her heart, then gently nodded. He didn't understand her language, but he understood her message. Beck had seen many things during his time in space. He had watched stars die, ships explode, soldiers cry. But nothing compared to this moment, watching a mother see her child safe. He stood by quietly, not wanting to break the silence, but Selra turned and motioned for him to sit beside her. He obeyed. For a while, they just sat there, two people from different worlds, one with burnt skin and shaking fingers, the other with a healing wound and tired eyes. But both had something in common: loss, and the will to fight for someone they loved. Later that day, Lern woke up, his eyes blinked slowly in the soft light. He looked around, confused, then saw his mother, tears running down her cheeks, standing at the door. He smiled, a weak, small smile. But it was enough. She ran to him, held his hand, kissed his forehead. He tried to speak, but she hushed him. "It's okay," she whispered in their alien tongue. "You're safe now." The boy turned his head toward the window and pointed. Outside? Beck stood, watching, arms crossed, smiling just a little. Lern looked up at his mother and said something simple. "Is he our sky now?" Selra didn't understand the words at first. Then she did. Back on their homeworld, people used to tell children when they felt scared, "Look to the sky. It will protect you." But their sky had turned to fire. Now her son had chosen a new one. Not red, not angry, but quiet and full of stars. A human dot over the next few days. Beck helped both mother and child recover. He brought them food, showed them how to use the station's simple tools. He even learned a few alien words using the translator. Water, safe. Thank you. Selra tried to teach him how to say Lern's name correctly. He messed it up every time, but she smiled anyway. Beck fixed the broken translator system and connected it to the medical AI. Now Selra could understand more, and slowly she began to speak back. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You, brave," she told him one morning. Beck chuckled. "Just stubborn." She didn't know the word stubborn. He laughed again, and she laughed with him. But not everything was light and peace. There was still one big question. What now? This outpost wasn't meant for long stays. Food was limited. The main station had already warned Beck that he had broken rules by flying to Karen soon. Someone would come. And when they did, would they help? Or would they take the child away? Would they send Selra back to her dying world? Beck sat at his desk, staring at the message screen. He could delete the records, hide the rescue, keep them safe, but hiding wasn't the answer. So he sent another message. I rescued a mother and child from a world we abandoned. If we are human truly, then let us act like it. Send help, not punishment. That night, as the stars floated outside the window, Selra came and stood beside him. She looked out at the stars for a while, then pointed to one of them. Home? Beck asked. She shook her head. No, gone. Then she pointed to herself, then to him, then to her child who slept peacefully on the couch, and she said the word that needed no translation. Family. It began with a quiet alarm, just one soft beep. Then two. Then the red light started flashing above the main screen. Incoming vessel detected Federation patrollee. TA. 1 hour. Beck's heart sank. He stared at the message, not blinking. He had been expecting this, but not so soon. The patrol ship was large, fast, and followed rules like they were written in stone. They didn't ask questions. They checked records, followed orders, and rarely showed mercy. And Beck, he had broken at least 5 major laws by rescuing aliens from a restricted zone. He took a deep breath, then turned toward the living area where Selra was softly singing to her child. The boy was playing with a broken spoon like it was a spaceship. His laughter filled the room. It made Beck's chest ache. He walked in slowly. Selra turned her head and smiled, but her smile faded when she saw his face. She had learned enough human expressions by now to know something was wrong. Beck knelt beside her and switched on the translator. He spoke slowly, clearly. A big ship is coming, he said. Not safe. You and Learn must leave with Mean. Selra looked confused. Leave? Where? Beck pointed upward. To the stars. To a safer place. She looked down at her child, then back at him. Together, she asked. He nodded once. Yes. Together. The next 30 minutes were chaos. Beck packed supplies, medicine, and water. He powered up the emergency shuttle against small, hidden, and unregistered. It was designed for escape, not for comfort. But it would fly. Selra helped gather food. Learn kept asking questions in soft words Beck couldn't understand. But Beck just patted his head and said, You'll be all right, buddy. He sealed the last crate when the second alert came. Federation Patrol has activated docking procedure. ETA. 12 minutes. Too fast. They were early. Beck looked at the control screen. His access codes were locked. The main bay doors wouldn't respond. The patrol ship was already linking to the main airlock. He had only one option left: escape through the emergency bay. Outside the station's radar field, but to get there, they had to cross a narrow maintenance corridor with zero shielding. If the patrol saw them, it would be over. He didn't waste a second. Beck grabbed his old field jacket and covered Learn's small body. Then handed a mask to Selra and helped her put it on. Stay close, he said. Do not stop. They moved fast. The lights flickered. As the patrol ship finished docking, a robotic voice echoed in the distance. Federation officers boarding Normain still and prepare for inspection. Beck ignored it. He moved down the maintenance tunnel, one hand holding Selra-S, the other hand resting on his old sidearm. They reached the final hatch. Beck punched in a code. The door slid open just enough for them to squeeze through. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Calm, cold, commanding. Selra looked back once. Beck touched her shoulder and shook his head. Don't look back. Just go. They entered the escape shuttle and sealed the hatch. Beck sat at the controls and began the launch sequence. The engines whined. The screen blinked. Unauthorized launch detected. Warning. Federation beacon has locked on. Beck's heart pounded. He hit the override. The ship jolted forward. Fired through a hidden tunnel out of the side of the station, stars rushed past the windows behind them. The patrol ship spun its sensors, but the escape pod was too small. Too cold. Invisible in deep space. Beck let out a long breath. They were gone. Selra leaned her head against the wall, holding her child close, her eyes closed not from fear, but peace. Lern looked up at Beck, who sat quietly at the controls. "Where we go?" the child asked in broken words. Beck smiled. "Someplace quiet, someplace warm. A planet where people still care." He didn't know the name of that place yet, but he would find it as they floated through the darkness. A soft light blinked on the panel. A nearby colony station had sent a welcome signal. No questions, just coordinates. Beck smiled again, tired but hopeful. He looked back at the boy already. Asleep again, then at the alien mother, still awake, still watching. She whispered something soft in her language. Beck couldn't understand the words, but he understood her eyes. She trusted him, not as a soldier, not as a rescuer, but as a man who refused to look away when no one else would help. The lights dimmed in the great hall. Thousands of eyes, human and alien, turned toward the center stage. A quiet hum floated in the air. The kind of silence that comes just before something important is spoken. Then a single spotlight turned on. A young man stepped forward. His clothes were simple, his face calm. But his eyes held a story as old as pain and as powerful as love. His name was Lee R.N., the alien child who had once nearly died on a dying world. Now stood tall before the galaxy. He looked down for a moment, gathered his breath, and spoke slowly, clearly into the translator. "I was born on a planet that no longer exists," he began. "My people left us behind. They said we wouldn't make it, but someone else, someone not from our world, came anyway." There were murmurs in the crowd. Some already knew the tale, but many did not. Lee R.N. raised his hand, and the room fell quiet again. "I do not remember much of the fire," he said. "I remember my mother crying. I remember hunger and heat and monsters that walked where trees once grew." He paused. "But I also remember arms that lifted me when I could no longer move. A voice that whispered, 'You're safe now,' and eyes that never looked away." He looked up, scanning the crowd. Those eyes belonged to a human. A man named Beck. He broke laws to save two strangers. He risked everything for a mother and her dying child. In the front row, old veterans nodded quietly. Some remembered Beck. A few had served with him. One had even tried to stop him, and failed. And no one regretted it now. Lern continued. "Beck hid us, protected us, and when his own people came to punish him, he ran with us. Not out of fear, but because he knew we didn't have time to wait for approval." The screen behind Lern came to life. It showed old security footage. A man in a burned jacket carrying a child through smoke. A mother crying over her son's bed. A small shuttle escaping. Just before a patrol locked the station down. Gasps filled the room. It was real. Lern pointed to the images. "This is not a story of war or weapons or power. It's a story of one choice. A human choice. The choice to care." He paused again. The room was so still, even the machines seemed to hold their breath. Beck did not live long after. He said softly, "His wounds were worse than he showed us. He made sure we were safe on a hidden colony." Then he walked out to see the stars one last time. Lern looked down, then wiped a tear from his cheek. My mother buried him beneath a small tree, the only green thing on that rocky world. He looked back up, voice steady now, and every night after, She would sit beside that tree and whisper, "You are the sky that saved us." A wave of emotion passed through the crowd. Some wiped their eyes. Others sat frozen, gripped by the quiet power of truth. Learn took one step forward. I am here today, not just as a survivor, but as a voice. A voice for those who have none. A voice for those left behind. A voice from the ashes. He opened his hand and held up a small metal badge, old, scratched, worn, Beck's unit tag. I carry this not as a medal, but as a promise. A reminder that even in our darkest moments, a single light, no matter how small, can change everything. He looked toward the highest seat in the hall, where leaders of many worlds sat. I ask you today to remember this. Not all heroes wear armor. Not all saviors fly ships. Sometimes they are just people. People who refuse to walk away. The crowd stood, slowly at first, then wave by wave. Species from across the galaxy, tall and short, scaled and smooth, all rising in silence. Then came the sound. Applause. Loud, aloud. Honest, endless. Learn stood still for a moment longer, then looked to the sky through the glass roof of the hall and whispered with a smile, "Thank you, Beck. You were our sky, and now you're the stars too."